Okay, I think it's okay to start. Lynn, you want to start us off?
I thought you said, hi, everybody. I thought you said Ashley was going to start us off. Is Ashley Comer on? Ashley? Thought she was supposed to open up.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I was told to share the screen. But I guess I don't have an agenda. I was told to share what we have going on. We do have like resources that are out there that we're providing for folks right now. If you guys are looking at the screen, we also have ASQ trainings that we're going to be having out in Federal Way for home care providers, and yeah, that's the bulk of what I have. So sorry, I was not prepared to say anything else. I'm just here sharing the screen and here to observe.
Thank you, Ashley, for filling in while I get my technical difficulties adjusted. Hi, everyone. Could we switch the screen to the agenda, Cynthia, now that we've shared the slide? Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. Yes, I was talking and you couldn't hear me. I will put that up right now.
Thank you. We have a couple of things to go over before we open up and get started this evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. All righty. So, yesterday, normally we would have had this meeting last week, but as you know, we had the inauguration, so we all chose to extend this meeting, and I hope it didn't affect your schedules too much. We'll definitely try to keep it more regularly on the third Wednesday moving forward. And then Ashley just covered our community coalitions and empowerment programs update. And our next update will come from Terry Rogers Kemp. And she has been supporting the Federal Way Black Collective in a lot of our endeavors. And a lot of that work has led to a task force with the governor. So thank you, Terry, for joining us.
Hi, Lynn. Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today, and I am given space to talk about some of the work that the Federal Way Black Collective has been engaged in, along with several other community organizations. Most recently, working with the Federal Way Black Collective, we are working to put together a community advisory board and sub-advisory board, and we're in the planning stages of that, to basically have a think tank to guide the Federal Way Black Collective and other community organizations, considering the needs of the community and how we can best meet those needs. And supporting the organizations that are working to support the community. And I don't know if anyone else is scheduled to talk about it, but one example of what we've been doing is the South King County Wellness and emotional support. Then I might have said that wrong. School is our acronym. And we are working to have regular, consistent access for the community, working to target all of the marginalized communities and target communities that are especially impacted by COVID. And we had some great discussion this morning at the meeting with His Honor and others that are in the community, talking about COVID and getting the vaccine, not just to the community, but getting the community ready for the vaccine. So all having to do with healthcare. What I'm hoping to share with everyone and that everyone will pay attention to is we're in the middle of our legislative session. Federal Way, Black Collective, and other community organizations, specifically the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability, the Defense Bar, Washington Defenders Association. We are all paying attention to bills in the legislative session right now that especially impact and hopefully will lift and support marginalized communities, especially the Black community. Everyone can tune in to the legislative session on TVW. I think all of the different cable systems have their own channels. I believe King County's is 26. Again, the mayor or staff may correct me on that channel, but you can certainly access that and look that up. You also can watch it, I know, online. Some of the bills that we're really trying to push this legislative session are police tactics, making outdated police tactics a target of getting rid of them, but then also to look at other ways to engage with the community, de-escalation and the reasonable care and the use of force. This specifically goes to deadly force, where police officers, so many, especially Black and brown men and women, are dying at the end of a firearm. We also think that, and many in the community also believe that if we have a policy that favors life, checking my time as I'm talking, that favors life and making sure that we are preserving and uplifting the sanctity of life. So we're working hard in the legislature to get an independent investigation of police use of force. We think that will deter the quick use of force, beefing up the laws surrounding that. Also, police officer accountability, making sure that we are addressing police officers who are routinely or as a practice somehow engaged in the use of force, looking at how we certify officers, train them, and make them better. And one of my prosecutor, the Honorable Representative Deborah Entenman, has drafted a bill. I really encourage everyone to pay attention to the draft for the independent prosecutor. Currently, the way that it is written, WDA, which is Washington Defenders Association, and Washington Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers have submitted significant changes that we are proposing with respect to the independent prosecutor bill. The Defense Bar is hoping for a completely independent prosecutor, independent of local prosecutors. The way that Her Honor's Representative Entenman's bill is written right now, it does still and yet include local prosecutors. That bill has not dropped yet. So I encourage you to call your legislators, call your representatives, and express your interest with regard to prosecution of police officers' use of deadly force. Again, WDA and WACDL are supporting a completely independent prosecutor, but take time to educate yourselves about the issue. Look out for the upcoming community forums and other information gathering systems where we are going to work to make a change with regard to police officer use of deadly force, how they are investigated, and how they are prosecuted. I should have started with I am Terry Rogers Kemp. I am blessed to be working with many organizations in the community, and especially the Federal Way Black Collective. I am a defense attorney by trade, and quickly moving into just community advocacy work. I've done mainly indigent defense for persons who are not able to afford to pay for an attorney. I am assigned by the county. I'm on the King County Assigned Counsel panel. I've been doing community advocacy work since 2012 with Trayvon Martin, working with a lot of different organizations. And that is how the defense bar gets into working in the community at this level. And then we also were on the task force with Ms. Sinetta Hunter. So all of my contact information, I'm going to put that in the chat, but you can always get in touch with me through Ms. Lynn Idahosa, the Executive Director of the Federal Way Black Collective. And I'm interested in working with you and helping you to help us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Terry, for that update. I'm not sure if Ms. Sinetta Hunter has joined us.
I'm going to take back, she's going to be a few minutes. She was trying to get on. So I'm going to step back because I was supposed to be moderating and kind of going over the agenda and things like that. I'm Tirza Idahosa. And so we want to take a look at the agenda so everybody knows what's going on. And we are going to have everybody to a time so we can kind of stay on track. But we want to have really good conversation going and stuff like that. So everybody knows where we're at and what we're doing. I wanted to take this time also because next month is Black History Month. And so I was looking about to see how important this meeting is and that we continue to do it. I took a look through Federal Way Black History, and I read an article that was called Being Black in Federal Way, and it was dated from May 13th, 1993. It's a good read, so hopefully everybody will take a look at it. But I wanted to take a look back from 1993 to where we are today. Some of the things that they mentioned in Being Black here in Federal Way were, you know, the issues with the school system, you know, not having many Blacks out here, going to the grocery store and not seeing foods that we like or hair products and things like that. They talked about, you know, not having just sports and not having arts and other things out here for our kids. So, you know, they talked about a lot of things, and a lot of things have changed. This is 2020, and we just, you know, have made some great strides here. But I wanted to read something that I thought was, well, two things. One thing, they talked about the library and going and not finding Black books by Black authors. And so I decided to check today just to see had that changed a little bit. They said they couldn't find Our Native Son, and they couldn't find Black Boy by Richard Wright, which are classics for African American people. So I called the library today since we're getting ready for Black History Month, and they had one, and they didn't have anything set up for next month, but they had some books there, but you kind of like got to search for them. So we're going to see if we can do something about that, because it was still a little hard to find some books there, which is really important. But one of the things that I really, really liked that I heard that that I think still stands for today, I don't know the person's name, but I'm going to read it while I'm giving Sinetta an opportunity to get ready. And his name was Mr. Jackson. So I'm going to quote, actually read from the article, which says that we've done a lot of work. We still have a lot to do, but we've come a long way. Mr. Jackson hopes attitudes will change over time. He sees Federal Way as being young enough to not have the ingrained race problems other cities have. They have the perfect opportunity. They have the perfect opportunity to get it right. He said, if they get everybody involved, then maybe other cities will take a hint. Federal Way can become a shining example, a jewel in the crown, and everybody will say, look at a little Federal Way. Look at what they're doing down there. And I want to say that that's exactly what we continue to say, and that's why we have these meetings we're having right now, because we believe that. We have gone from 9% Black back in 1993. We are now over 16% African Americans here in the school district. So that was just a little trivia to kind of get us going. to understand why this is so important. And these meetings are something that we need and are necessary to create the change that we all want to see because we love Federal Way. So I'm looking to see if Sonetta actually got on yet. She's still not here?
I'm here.
Okay, so Sonetta, I'm gonna let you up and you have 10 minutes to talk to us about the governor's task force and the police accountability. Thank you for joining us.
Annetta, I'm sorry, Miss Annetta, before you speak, whoever is on the phone, we can't mute you, but we're hearing background. Can you please be so kind as to mute your phone? Thank you so much. Okay, Miss Annetta, sorry for the interruption.
Okay, I apologize. I'm just getting on. And what is it that you just said, Pam?
That I'm introducing you for you
Sorry,
to
Pam.
come and be able to speak on the governor's task force and for police accountability. And we want to thank you for your service being on that task force. But before I turn it over to you again, the phone number that needs to be muted is the last 4 digits is 5232. So if you recognize that as your last 4 numbers, we're gonna ask you to mute yourself, please. Thank you. So, Mr. Netta Hunter.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so the task force has mostly completed our meetings. We still have some pieces that we're putting together, but the majority of the work has been done and we're excited about it. And we worked on 2 parts of legislation, the independent investigation piece, which will involve a independent agency to oversee investigations that involve officers with misconduct, generally fatalities and major injuries. And so the task force will be, again, independent. It'll be based out of the governor's office, and they will be charged with having independent investigators and a rather large team of regional departments that will go to the actual scene of these incidents and investigate them. And so we're excited about that. Still a lot of work to be done in putting it together, but the groundwork has been laid for that. And along with their second piece of legislation will involve prosecutions, and again, having an independent prosecutor to handle those matters. The majority of the task force felt local prosecutors would have some issues with, prosecuting officers who they work with on a daily basis. And so the majority of the team felt, majority of the task force felt having an independent prosecutor to handle those cases would be the best approach. And again, these are recommendations. There's naturally some pushback on different things that the task force is recommending, but we feel good about the amount of work that we laid in the foundational pieces that we put together for the legislature and the governor to look at. And so we're in the stage right now of just finalizing everything so that it could be submitted and voted on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I apologize. I'm on the road, and so there's a little road noise on my side. But so those are the major components of what the task force has been working on, I believe, since June. So it was a lot of work and a lot of meetings. But we really feel the work has been really rewarding, and we're looking forward to the end product. And there's several other pieces of legislation that are coming out to deal with policing in our state. And I think most of us are really encouraged by what we've seen so far.
Thank you so much, Sonetta. This is a really big job, especially given the hour and the day that we're in. I mean, the world is crying out about these concerns for police accountability. And it seems like, I don't know, it's going to take an act of God, but at least we're moving closer than we were yesterday. So that's really, really good to see. One of the questions that I have before I turn it over, because I know the mayor's coming up next. One of the questions that I want to have, there's a definite difference between police oversight boards and police accountability boards. They're two different things. And we're looking for, one of the things that we've been asking for in Federal Way specifically, is a police accountability board. So when I want to know what you're working on with the governor, how is that being addressed as well for the task force? Are they looking at accountability or an oversight board? As well as some of the issues were brought up that some of the mayors in our area, and Mayor Farrell, I love you, but I know Federal Way is one of those mayors that have not supported doing the boards because they don't want to be able to, and I need to be clear, maybe he'll straighten out what I don't know. Something about the police officers, so they don't have to testify or aren't required to do something. And I know there's like 5 cities that are standing against that. So some of these things cannot go forth. I know it has nothing to do with the governor's board, but just in general, like Federal Way, wanting to have a police accountability board. I know something has to do with these 5 mayors not wanting the police officers to be held accountable, in essence, for what they need to be held accountable for. And I know Cynthia took good notes, so she can probably talk about what I'm talking about to make it more clear to people. But I want to make sure that's addressed when we do turn it over to the mayor. Can you answer that maybe before we turn it over, Zanetta? I don't know if she got off because she's traveling. Maybe she's still not on. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Oh, in
Oh,
here
she's
as well?
not on.
Okay, I'm gonna say she can also speak to some of that, but so with the governor's task force, naturally it's something that's being put in place statewide. It doesn't have any connection to what cities do independently, and so certainly cities are encouraged to look at their own departments and ways that they can feel the police are being accountable by someone other than themselves, because the whole thing is we've come to recognize with everything that's been happening in our nation that the police can effectively police themselves. And it's not a slight against the police, it's just the nature of the work. And so independent departments are still very much encouraged to look at their own internal needs for accountability and put something in place, so the citizens can feel that there's a local body that they can go to and express any concerns. And it's not even just to hold the police accountable, but even when they're doing something right, they need a place to go and commend officers that are doing the right things as well. And so what the state is doing is on a much larger scale. And so with independent cities will still very much need to establish their own accountability networks.
Thank you. And I do appreciate you saying that, because I know sometimes the police feel like we're ganging up on them, and that's not really the case. They've been able to do so many things because the way the laws have been written. So they're acting in the way they've been told they can act. So we don't want them to think that we're against them, because we need policing and we want them to be safe as well as we want to be safe. So I'm going to turn this over to our mayor. And I said, I really care about Mayor Farrell. I know he's doing a good job. We don't always agree, but we keep working and keep having great conversation. That's why we're here doing what we do now. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and he has 20 minutes. And after that, we will have, so if everybody can hold your questions, maybe write them down, because we will have time after he speaks to come back. And then I will turn it over to Cynthia, and she'll be available for us to have questions and answers, so we can, get down to some meat of some things, because we're not here just to meet. We're actually here to affect change. And here's my co-host. So I'm turning it over to Mayor Farrell. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I would like to, when we first got started, I referenced several council members. We've got Councilmember Moore, Council President Honda, Councilmember Baruso. I think Councilmember Kraft is here. I see Representative Taylor. Oh, Councilmember Kraft, there you are. I see Councilmember, State Representative Taylor. I think State Representative Johnson is on. Great to have you guys in the house. We've got School Board Director Lakeisha Phillips, and hi, Representative Johnson. And it's great to see so many people here tonight. I hope I got everybody. Let me turn the page. We've also got the police chief on, and Oh, actually, Jamila, I sent you a quick letter, but we wanted to congratulate you on being elected by your caucus as chair of the Black Caucus down in Olympia. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be in that role and be able to represent the 30th district in this statewide important way of bringing voice of the Black community to the state of Washington, the legislature. And so I'm here to listen as part of my role tonight.
Me too. So all of us and Representative, we're just expecting great things from both of you. We're really excited to have you here tonight and have you down there every day on our behalf. I also want to say at our next council meeting next Tuesday, we are celebrating Black History Month. We've got a proclamation, and Lynn Idahosa and I believe Tirza and other members of the Black Collective, along with Reverends Gordon Banks, Reverend Andre Sims, and Reverend Joseph Bowman. So that'll be a great time to celebrate and talk about the amazing things happening in our community and around the country, and well, I'll let the proclamation speak for itself when we get there. Tirza, you had a quick question about litigation. I think we talked about this maybe a couple of meetings ago. What you were referring to was 4 cities, and it was Renton, Auburn, Kent, and Federal Way, and it was a process in regarding inquests. And inquests are ordered usually by the county executive, always by the county executive, if there's an officer involved fatal shooting. And those rules are prescribed by statute. The litigation, which was initiated by these 4 cities, that includes Federal Way, was we believe that there was I wouldn't use the word improper, but just not allowed by law, change to the process. And therefore, there's multiple issues involved, and I don't want to belabor that. But we took that to King County Superior Court. We prevailed at King County Superior Court, and then the King County Superior Court judge who handled the matter actually invited the county to take it to the state Supreme Court to make sure that we got clarification. So that's where it sits right now. It'll be my understanding is it is now before the state Supreme Court to be resolved, and it's really about processes and making sure that we've got a fair process, and also one that comports with the law. I couldn't just change ordinances about things at the city without going through a legal process, and so we had some concerns about that in regard to overall fairness. And if anybody wants more detail about that, we can just let Steve or Bill know, and or myself, and we'll get you all the information you'd want about that. Okay, so let's talk about what's happened since our last meeting. October 14th was our last quarterly meeting, and so this is our 3rd meeting, and it is really, gosh, I can't believe how much time has passed. It's since we had our first meeting in August. I feel like we've made a lot of progress in there. Several requests were made at the October 14th meeting. Within 6 days of that meeting, we actually put forward the proclamation that will be shared on your screen right now, which is Federal Way, a welcoming and inclusive city, that clearly expressed no tolerance for racism in Federal Way, and really talked about the kind of community that we expect and really that we're calling for and that we are celebrating. So I'm not going to read it for you right now, but if you'd like a copy of that, we can get you a copy of that. But we felt like it addressed many of the issues. And we actually did one very much like this back in 2017, declaring Federal Way a welcoming and inclusive city. And I had some of the similar language, but we wanted to make sure that we were responsive to the request for a proclamation that occurred just a week before. And then, as many of you know, and again, if you'd like a copy of that, just let us know and we can send that to you. Then at our last meeting, which was well, actually not for, I read it at the last meeting, but it was actually for Martin Luther King Day on the 18th of January. I issued a mayoral proclamation for Black Lives Matter, a call to action. there was was on the front page of the Mirror. And then at the city council meeting the next day, on the 19th, I read this again. And, and many times we have, council and mayor proclamations, but this request had been made specifically by me by this group and at this meeting back in October. And I felt it imperative that as the mayor of the city, as the chief executive officer for the city, that this should come from me, and it did. And I do want to let everybody here know, though, that I've heard from nearly every council member that was incredibly supportive, and their only request is, hey, I want to sign on to this, so I wanted to let you know that. It's something that is we didn't want to just say Black Lives Matter. We really put a lot of thought into this, and it's like, of course they do, and they always have, and they will always continue to. The issue, though, is what do we, by saying that, what do we mean? And it is really, that's why I entitled it A Call to Action. And that's our charge to move forward and to make sure that everything that we do at the city is about equity and inclusion and diversity. It is the forefront of the decisions that we make. And so I took some time. I know that when we talked back in October about this, I clearly needed a little bit of time to think about it. But I think having stepped back and really put my heart and my thoughts to it, and really about where I think we need to be, this was a clear statement of where we need to be as a community, and especially where I need to be as the leader of the city. So I'm really proud of it. And again, if anybody would like an individual, if you'd like a color copy with all the signatures, we could send that to you. And we could even send you one of those paper frames as well. Okay, also, there was discussion, and I want to thank the council for their leadership in regard to the position of what we refer to as an FTE, a full-time equivalent position, and that's the council during budget deliberations made it very clear that this was a priority. We found the money, and we have now. This is for a diversity, equity, and inclusion position, manager position, and we just posted this. Today is the 27th. Today's the 27th. We just posted it yesterday. We took language from 7 different cities in regard to what we wanted to see in regard to a job description. We ran it by the council. Wanted to make sure, because this was something that had been discussed in the community, and so we're already in. I wanted to make sure you guys saw the job description as well. And this is something, again, it's posted right now. We posted it yesterday, and we have a regular process. We go through that, and that is out there right now. And we found the money in the budget, and so we're moving forward with it, and we'll get that job filled as soon as possible. Okay, and then there was an update, and I think also I'd want to make sure it's the position right now is half-time, but I think we're looking in the very near future to make that a full-time position. I think that there's a desire in the council, and I'm sure in the community to do that as well. But that's where we're headed with it. And we also, this position will be working with and collaborating with and partnering with the Diversity Commission. And so that's something that is critical in their work. And I know that Sarah Bridgeford in Human Services has just done a phenomenal job. But she's got we're going to talk about COVID relief and everything going on and housing. Sarah is very busy, and we need somebody that can that this is their specialty, and in respect for the Diversity Commission and the important work that this is. So Diversity Commission update, and we're really proud of the Diversity Commission. Their focus, I think they really want to focus, from my understanding and the reports I've got, and from talking to members of staff and understanding what their work plan is very focused on policy work and would like to get more involved in policy work. They had a forum for the movie 13th, and it was a movie about the 13th Amendment and about incarcerations and the criminal justice system. It was a good discussion, and that occurred on January 16th. We just finished an amazing MLK event. I'd like to thank the Diversity Commission and Jerry Lynn and all of those who participated, and it was a great celebration and presentation done. Everything we do now has to be remotely, but it was just great. It was great to see those young scholars present their ideas and people in the community as well. So that was really good. I do know that the Diversity Commission is working on a number of different initiatives, and like I said, they had the forum, and they're going to continue that work. And I know that they would like to get more involved in policy work, and Sarah has told me some of the things that are planned for the upcoming agenda. Then next on the follow-up in regard to independent asks were Independent Citizen Review Committee. Now, so I think the question had been asked about accountability board versus Citizen Review Committee, and I actually hadn't heard a real difference between those. In all candor, what I had heard was these accountability board, or citizen oversight, essentially. And we know that we've got the police advisory group that was previously called the Chiefs Call, and that is ongoing. They just had a meeting last week, I believe. And what I would say is that we're following very closely a number of bills down in the legislature that would address statewide standards in regard to Citizen Review Committee. In fact, we've got a meeting with Representative Johnson tomorrow about one of those bills, HB 1203. So it's something that we're following, and that's something that I know that there's a real commitment to. But let's see how the legislature shakes out in regard to which direction that's going in. But that's the update with regard to that. Housing update. So as you know, during as we were working on COVID relief, we were able to get out with the CARES Act money. I have to tell you, just to see the people here, to see people in the community and how they've responded, and our city employees and our council. Our council has just done amazing work, and the council approved in the CARES Act distribution. Hey, Bill, I may need some water. Please. We got $500,000, $500,000 to El Centro de la Raza for disbursement with regard to rent assistance. And out of that $500,000, $498,600 went directly to rent assistance. And the average contribution was $2,740. Earlier today, during the meeting with the Black Collective that I have monthly, there was a question about, hey, what we would really like to know, what was the contribution to BIPOC communities, to BIPOC families, with regard to what percentage? And I'm happy to report that, actually, Bill, are you ready for the graphic? I'm happy to report, and is there any way to zoom that up a little bit, or are we stuck with that size? Oh, you can. Okay. Okay. So if you take a look at it, so out of the 182 grants, 10, we had, God, I got to put my glasses on, you guys. We had, 19, which represents 10%, were white. Black African-American, we had a total of 51 out of 182, and that represented 28% of all grants. 2 were people of Asian descent at 1%. Then we had 5 Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander at 3%. We had African American and white families. There was 2 at 1%, and then other or multiracial was 103 at 57%. So we did some other, so if you calculate the total BIPOC communities, it was 90% received funding through El Centro de la Raza, who just did a phenomenal job. getting that out. So, and I'd like to say thank you to Sarah for her assistance with this graph and with Bill, and also thank you to the Black Collective for asking us earlier today to make sure that we had those had this readily available in the percentages. So a lot of great work, and I'm really proud of the assistance that our city government was able to get out to all, within a week last November, we were able to get out $400,000 to restaurants at, I believe, $5,000. We got 82 checks out for $5,000. And that was in addition to $1,000 and $2,000 grants that they had previously gotten. So it was really an all hands on deck to assist our local businesses. Okay, so we're going to have, with regard to Black-owned bank and Federal Way and other economic development opportunities, I want to put that aside for a second. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Let's talk about sister cities. We'll be collaborating with the Federal Way Black Collective and others to make this happen. As many of you know, we have two sister city relationships, and they're both in Asia. And there's been the suggestions been made to open one up with an African city. I think that's a great idea, both for cultural exchange and potential commerce, and we're going to be looking in that. And a sister city relationship has also been proposed for a city in the Ukraine, Rivne. And we actually had Rivne at a conference call with their newly elected mayor recently. And so that's what's going on in regard to sister cities. But obviously, any travel or anything like that has been, I'd like to thank Councilmember Moore for his assistance in helping with set that up. Let's see, early learning opportunities. I know that Director Phillips was inquired about that at our last meeting and concerned about early childhood education and home centers and how difficult it is for toddlers, to come out of this in a healthy way. Having a 13-year-old that's been on Zoom for the past year is, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for our young people, and I think we all recognize that. And hopefully hopefully we can get our kids, back to school as soon as possible. With regard to the legislative agenda, we'll start with the federal for the first time in quite some time. We actually have a federal lobbyist. Our federal legislative priorities, some of the highlights include that we'll be seeking for COVID relief is rental assistance, stimulus for businesses, vaccination support, which I'm going to talk about in more detail later in just a minute, increased federal minimum wage, direct support for state and local government, enhanced unemployment and SNAP benefits support and enhancements, and then support for enhanced police training, which is critical moving forward for the community, for everybody. Funding for women and minority-owned businesses that have truly suffered under this COVID environment, and in environmental justice and fleet conversion for electric vehicles, which will be a major focus moving forward. So at the state level, we're going to be seeking business relief, broadband internet access, identifying areas of need, mapping with the help of King County and state resources. It's one of the things we've been working with the school district, Dr. Campbell and her team, and we've had Thomas talk with them about, talk with the school district, really about kind of heat mapping areas in which we've got challenges. We're also for criminal justice issues, as our state representatives and city council members know, and I'm sure many of you know, that we're trying to get a body camera program started, and we're looking to get that off the ground with a $350,000 pilot program with all things you need to start, at some place. And we're obviously watching very closely, and we'll be advocating for police reform measures. Reach Center for Youth, we've asked for 100,000, and if anybody wants a copy, it's on the screen right now. Some of the initiatives that we're working with our great state representatives on. With COVID-19, we've got, our concern is with regard to equitable testing and vaccinations. I want to let everybody know. Okay, so we can go back. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Bill. So obviously, the first thing I want to talk about is access. And as many of you may have seen in the Federal Way Mirror, I reached out to King County and made sure that they knew, the King County Public Health, that they knew they could utilize the Performing Arts and Event Center as a site. Actually, we offered up 3 locations, and this is sort of like the Goldilocks thing without getting to the 2 others. As soon as they got to the PAC, I'm told, I wasn't on the tour, but they came for the tour, and we were going to show them the parking lot of the Celebration Park, and we were also going to show them Community Center. But as soon as they saw the PAC, they're like, yeah, that's it. And so hopefully they'll get set up in a very short period of time. I know that they're very interested in the site. I know that they're also looking at, and I think pretty far along with regard to the Kent location at the Showware, and Auburn, the Auburn location as well. But we have a site available for them if and when they're ready to come, and we're hopeful they will. They've identified that they could get up to 2,000 shots a day done at that location at a Performing Arts and Event Center. Also, I had a conference call with CHI Franciscan Deputy Director, Dr. Ananth Aparna, who's also a Federal Way resident. And she was actually very involved with the testing center down at the Aquatic Center. And Dr. Campbell and I had a meeting with her and several others with CHI Franciscan. The city offered up the community center for that group for a vaccination center. And I know that the school, Dr. Campbell also opened up school property, gymnasiums, whatever facility they would want to use. So then a few days went by, and then we had a Greater Federal Way Emergency Operations Center meeting. And we've been having those meetings every other week for a year. And our partners in the EOC are just great. And we've been talking very much about access to vaccination centers. And after that meeting, I called Dr. Aparna back and I said, let's, and just checked on the status of CHI's plans. And they distribute up to, I think, 15 to 21% of the vaccine statewide. And I said, we would love to have you at the community center. We could put you in the community rooms. And it looks like they're going to do that. And they are making steps. So two of our premier city facilities, both the PAC and the community center, are in line and ready to go. And preparations, I think, are being made, and they could get 1,000 vaccinations per day at the PAC. What makes the vaccination, and Council President Honda knows all full well, and I'm sure many of you are as well, that what makes it a challenge in regard to locations is making sure you have the space, because there has to be a 15-minute observation period after the vaccinations. But we're also really concerned about, we want to make sure that there's equity involved here, that we get the information out to people who may not readily. And I know, Lakeisha, you've got a real heart for this, and I've been hearing that, and I wholeheartedly agree. We need to get the information out about these vaccination centers, and I think that it's also incumbent upon. And I've had several council members, Councilmember Kraft, Councilmember Moore, talk, and also we talked about it today extensively during the monthly meeting with the Black Collective, really about an education campaign and talking to the BIPOC community, who maybe, I wouldn't say suspicious, but and maybe a little suspicious, but just wary and careful, or there's been a long history in this nation about vaccinations, and I think that there is in the BIPOC community perhaps some initial resistance to vaccinations and that kind of thing. So I think what we want to do is make sure that we get that information out, that we provide a conduit, and making sure that we are doing so, that we're just providing the best information that we can, and we target that information out and so that's what Steve's going to be working on, Steve McNay, to make sure that we really get that information out. And it's about trust, and it really is about making sure that there's equity with regard to the distribution of the vaccine, and that we're doing everything we can to provide an information base for people to make the best decision for themselves. So that's something that I think was the passion this morning, and something that we've been talking about quite a bit. Okay. I also know that there's Virginia Mason, I think, no, it was actually Swedish, was working with the Pacific Islanders group, and The Veterans Administration is providing vaccine to folks, and King County. Well, I think what's interesting is in regard to distribution of the vaccines, King County is about a third of the population of the state, but it does not have a third of the vaccination. So I think we've got to make sure we get our share, and we need to get it out as soon as possible. But if the community center could put out 1,000 a day, in the Performing Arts and Event Center can get 2, and then you've got Kaiser. We can get our entire 100,000 population signed up, very well. Let's see here. I talked about the BIPOC community, the medical advice, or at least the background. And I think the key thing is that, while it's one thing to say, see your primary care provider, a lot of people in the BIPOC community don't necessarily have a community primary healthcare provider just readily available. So we just want to make sure that there's an acknowledgement of that, and that there's a good education campaign. And we need, we talked about making sure we had credible messengers to get that message out. So let's go back. I remember I bookmarked the discussion with Tim. Back in October, we did extensive research on Black-owned banks, and something that we're really excited about. We've been very busy with regard to economic development news and bringing businesses to Federal Way. And we've got, a memorandum on our efforts there, and something that we're working on. Without getting too far into the memo, I would say that actually, economic development wise, we've got some big news coming, not necessarily related to BIPOC or that issue, but I think all of us have an interest in our local economy. The Red Robin, which was closed at that site due to the incoming light rail station, is actually going to be coming to the former Ram restaurant. So very soon you're going to see the Ram take over the former, you'll see Red Robin take over the former Ram location. So watch for that. The long-awaited Old Navy and Skechers are coming, and we've got quite a number. Tim, are you on the call? Tim Johnson? Well, he was here. And let's see here. I know that one of the things, also economic development, along with city council members, distributed information to businesses this past weekend on the second round of the federal government's Paycheck Protection Program. It's a federal program. Over 1,342 businesses received $108 million. We do not have information on SBN racial composition. This is Tim's words. We do know that that only comprise 20% of the businesses in the city. He says, I know that James Caroma and Tim Johnson, the city's economic development director, have been working together to identify and contact BIPOC-owned businesses about the program. And sorry? Go ahead. Hello? Okay, so let's see here. And I know that, well, I won't get into that. And also we're going to have Smith Brothers Dairy coming into Federal Way off of 9th Avenue. And then also Fix Environmental has also submitted applications. So a lot of things going on right now. That is essentially my report, and I'd love to take any questions.
Before we go to the question section, because I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia for the question and answer session, but I did want to clarify some things, because I know words are very powerful, and I know we've been here trying to do some great things here, but reading over what you're talking about as far as the police accountability, I think you guys have it as an independent review committee. We need to start saying words the way we need it to be said, because this is not what we're asking for. There is a real difference between the police accountability and police oversight, or police committee that you have down here, a police review. The one that has the most meat, that can really actually hold people accountable and do like all of these things, is the Police Accountability Board, and that's what we are asking for. So I'd like to see it stated in those terms whenever we see it or discussed. As we know, words are powerful, and people take action by what the words are. And the words are, we definitely want a Police Accountability Board in Federal Way. So not a police, what is it called?
I hear you.
Just
This
stand for
agenda
clarification.
was provided to me by the Federal Way Black Collective. So
And that's probably so, but that's why we're getting lost in translation. That's why I'm trying to bring it back to where originally what we sat and asked for is,
Okay.
so they'll all stay on the same vein from here. That I'm just clarification. So to stay on
Good.
the same vein, Police Accountability Board is what we're asking for.
Okay.
And
All right,
that,
Bill, let's make sure. Yeah.
yeah. And so we
Okay.
also talked about the movie 13, which was really, really good. I sat in on that. The only part that I still have to, the state, like with the city of Federal Way, we have almost 100,000 people here, and there was less than, I think, I'm gonna say 25 to be on the high side on that, because people did not get the information. We continue to say, this is a technology era. You know, we have technology in this city and everywhere else, and it's inexcusable that we can't get information out to people. There should be more people at these meetings. We can't get information out. We've got to do better than that, not just for the Federal Way Black Collective, but for the city of Federal Way as a whole. You know, they had less than 25 people on that at that meeting, which was really, really good. And I know if people had information, they would have been there. The other thing, when we're talking about getting information out for the vaccine, we have to be part of, you know, this meeting with the mayor and the city council and the African American community is to share information. So we can't just say we just need to get information out about the vaccine and think that, you know, correct information is going to make people of color be happy that they're getting information, because we have been used and abused by the medical health professionals for a very long time. Even just last month, the director of Odessa Brown, Dr. Danielson, who actually was one of my kids' doctors when I did my foster care, he took care of a lot of our kids. So I know him and his reputation. He resigned from Children's Hospital because of the way African Americans have been treated, even in his clinic. So it's not something that was happening just years ago. I know people right now that during the pandemic are being kicked out of their healthcare providers because they refuse to understand the differences that it takes, you know, for Black healthcare. So it's not something that you can just say, well, we're going to educate about the vaccine. We need to change the way African Americans and people of color are treated by the healthcare system, period. So I just want to be, you know, help you on that. Maybe we can do some education, training. I don't know, but something has to take place, because even their systems, like when they talk about the pain levels, they say we don't say pain the same way. So the medicines and what's the word I'm looking for? Like if the thermometer says, if the weight thing says one thing, the scale says one thing, for Black people it's something different, but it's all set to other people, not Black people. We're not included in those charts. So we don't fit in the chart. So we are medically mistreated. So it's more than just reading what's in the vaccine. That's all I'm saying. So we could help educate on that level. So those are the kind of things that I wanted to bring attention to. And again, I stand by what the guy said in 1993. Please go back and read that article. And again, it was entitled Being Black in Federal Way. Again, he said some really great things about the journey that we're on. And I think we've come to that journey and we're doing really good on it. So again, we're going to keep moving forward. And thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia for any questions.
Good evening, everyone. So this is the time in which the community, those from the African diaspora, get to have a dialogue with the mayor and the mayor's staff if they're available to ask specific questions. So what I will ask is, if you have access to technology, put your questions in the chat if you have. I know some people are on their phone and it may be difficult to do that. So I'm going to ask you to put your questions in the chat, send it to everyone, and then I will bring that question up. And if we need for clarification, I will definitely call on you to elaborate, okay? And I will do my best to make sure we get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. If you are unable to use the chat for any reason, if you look under participants, you can raise your hand, and I will look up under there. I will look on the participants and see if someone has raised their hand and make sure that I call on you for your question. So at this point, I'm sure there are lots of questions. The mayor has given us lots and lots of information. So please, by all means, go ahead and do so. Again, these are questions coming from those of the African diaspora. If you are not of that lineage, then I would ask that you would hold your questions, because towards the latter part of the agenda, we do have time for people to ask questions who are not of the African diaspora. It is all too often that folks in our community don't get access. And the mayor has so graciously allowed us some time every quarter to just have a dialogue with him. And we want to be respectful and allow our community to have the primary time for our voice. Okay? Thank you. So please put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. And if you can't get to the chat, or raise your hand in participants, then the other thing you could do is on your screen, do reactions and do the thumbs up, and I'll call on you.
I do see, just so you know, Cynthia, I see a message here from Allison Vine that she said she got her vaccine here in Federal Way at CMAR. That's great information. I do know that Kaiser is administering vaccines as well. Representative Taylor writes, please make sure the vaccine hour is extended to the evening for people who are unable to get to the site during business hours. Great point. I see Louis Guyton. Great to see you here. Mayor Farrell, could we create more space for other Black men who are in the trenches community serving youth and families to meet with you on a monthly basis? Of course, Louis, anytime. Let's see here. So, Bill, let's make sure we follow up with Louis, please.
Okay.
So can I speak to that a little bit?
Yep.
What?
Yes.
Nice seeing you, Jim Farrell, Mayor Farrell. What we want to begin to happen is that some of us, and there's a few Black men on this call now that are in the trenches on a daily, weekly basis, serving food, working with families, working with youth. And what we don't want to start happening is when crisis happens, then we're called to the table to try to resolve issues. So I think in this year, Jim Farrell, I'm asking, and I'm okay with leading it. Can we get some other Black men into the spaces with you to build relationship and to kind of create a strong front line of men in the village? Because one of the things when I look at leadership, Jim Farrell, is that when other young Black men see Black men sitting with officials, it gives them a kind of a mindset that the mayors and Jim, all the different chief of police are meeting with us, and a lot of times that can create a bridge of relationship building. So it's just something I think we need to address, especially not just using the words BIPOC, but being actionable as far as building authentic relationship with brothers who are in the trenches. When I hear the proclamation, at some point, I would like to see other Black men being a part of the proclamation.
Yeah, actually, Steve just came in my office. He says, I want to staff that. So absolutely. So Liz, can you send me your email? I'm sure we've got it, but can you just make sure you follow up with an email and make sure that we've got, and maybe even, introduce us via email with some of the folks here, and we'll set up the meeting right away.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Louis. So Steve Harrington says, can the mayor go back over the police accountability issue to confirm he understands the issue? Steve, I'm gonna ask you to unmute and be a little more specific about what it is you would like about police accountability for the mayor to address, to confirm.
Yes, Cynthia, this is Steve Harrington. I'm sitting here with my wife. My wife wrote that email, so let me have her address that concern that she has.
Hi, my name is Denise Harrington, and I just want to go back over the police accountability issue to me is to make them accountable when things happen. And I'm not sure that we're seeing, or I didn't hear that that is what the mayor thought.
Well, let me hold on. So welcome. It's good, great to have you guys on the call. So I think accountability is a key piece of our of the City of Federal Way Police Department. It's a critical piece. Right now, even if there's an officer involved shooting, based on the results of Initiative 940, we actually bring in, by statute, by law, we bring in the whole process that has to play in regard to an independent law enforcement agency has to investigate it. We are not involved in any way. We have no idea, nor can we get any kind of status reports. Nothing. And there are representatives from the community that are involved. So with regard to that kind of thing, that's there. But there are all kinds of internal. There's standards investigations and internal investigations, and Federal Way police officers have been fired. And that is something that we're very proud of the police department that we have, and the chief can speak to the whole accountability process. I want to make sure that when we're talking about this, that it's clearly understood that there is there is accountability for officers that commit misconduct. Now, what I would say in regard to this we also have a citizen, advisory group to the police chief, and that's something that we've been doing, for, it used to be called the Chief's Call, and then after a few years ago, based on conversations like this, we made it the mayor's, the chief's advisory group. But with regard to the, this structure, this is one of the reasons why I talked about uniformity, because my understanding is, just off the top of my head, I think there's 168 law enforcement agencies in the state of Washington, somewhere in that number. You've got all the police, you've got all the cities, counties, state patrol, and out of all of those agencies, there are only 3 that have this independent police oversight, structure. That's less than 1% in the state. So the City of Federal Way is not an outlier. The City of Federal Way is has a proud tradition of making sure that we hold people accountable, and making sure that we've got a robust system of accountability. But like I said, there are a number of bills that are addressing there are a number of bills that are addressing a statewide system. And one of the things that happened, where I'll just use DUI as an example, there was for a while, with regard to certain types of laws, you had different procedures in different jurisdictions, and whether or different standards, and we don't want to have, I think, some uniformity to the process, and clear, consistent. I think there's a great deal of merit to making sure that that you've got that uniformity. But I think if we've got an officer that clearly commits misconduct or lies or does anything like this, and let me say this: even I spent 19 years as a prosecutor. Any officer who's ever caught lying ends up on a Brady, what's referred to as a Brady list. Brady versus Maryland. It's a seminal U.S. Supreme Court case. And that officer, anybody that ends up on a Brady list of the City of Federal Way or at the King County Prosecutor's Office is immediately terminated, would be immediately terminated from the city. So we do not tolerate lying. We do not tolerate misconduct or assault. We terminated an officer once for an assault that occurred here in the City of Federal Way that we found that occurred at the station. So,
come in. I know.
Winston, Mr. Winston, sir, can you please mute your phone or thank you. Go ahead, Mayor.
So that officer was found to have assaulted somebody with a baton, and that officer was immediately terminated. So we don't tolerate misconduct by our officers. And so I want to make sure that it's clear that when we talk about this, there are different things we're talking about, but we have a clear system of accountability. Now, if there's a desire statewide, and I know that we've got a legislative session going on to have a uniform system of what is a uniform system of accountability, we're taking a look at that. Like I said, we're going to be meeting with Representative Johnson tomorrow night about that very issue. So that's where we're at.
Okay, so one of the other questions, and thank you very much for that question, Ms. Denise. The next question we have, I believe, is from one of our diversity commissioners, Ms. Trinice Rogers. Mayor, how do you feel about Federal Way Public School administrators interfering with police investigations? What is your policy surrounding this disturbing pattern, and how are you going to address this issue?
Good question. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. So the question is, how do you feel about the Federal Way Public Schools administrators interfering with police investigations? What is your policy? Yeah.
Well, we would not tolerate interference with a criminal investigation from anybody. And I don't think Dr. Campbell would support that. I think things are situational, and I would love to have a conversation, and I know that there's plenty of circumstances, and so in answering that question, I don't want to dismiss it. And so I don't know the circumstances to which you're referring to. What I could say is that there's not a tolerance or an acceptance from our part of anybody interfering with a police investigation, period. And we wouldn't tolerate it. Not if I was aware of it. And I don't think Dr. Campbell would either, but she's not here. But let's talk about that later. Maybe Trinice, maybe that's something you and I could talk about.
Okay.
Well, clearly, whatever you want to, well, I'll reach out.
Okay. So Diane had to leave on the call, but she mentioned in the chat that the Central Area Senior Center in Seattle is partnering with Safeway Pharmacy to host a vaccination site for 600 people. We're also doing this in partnership with FAME, which is First AME Church, predominantly a Black congregation in Seattle. And they will host one on site. Safeway is very interested in working with communities with COBs to ensure that we reach BIPOC. So I'm thinking that CBOs, community-based organizations, so that's something to keep in mind. I definitely will bring that back to my healthcare system.
Yep.
Let's see, and then Ms. Terry Rogers Kemp says, one way to ensure accountability is to not hire police officers who have resigned or been fired for misconduct in other departments. This is an example of accountability, and wherein the local community can weigh in on accountability measures pre-hiring.
That's spot on. One of the things you always want to make sure of is, especially, that whatever position, especially a police, that you're not inheriting someone's, a bad, bad employee from another department. And that's why we do background checks. We make sure that we've got, that we check with the agencies and find out what the reason was. For many years, we had quite a number of officers come over from Honolulu or from Hawaii coming over here. And it's understandable why, you'd see, people move around. And we do get people, what they call lateral. And those lateral hires are easier with the system because there's not all that advanced lead time with regard to a full academy. And that they've been trained through an academy. But I think we do our best to make sure that we're not getting somebody else's problem. And actually what happens pretty quickly, we've had a couple of times in which we've gotten people into the force, and in that first year when they're on the probation period, you can find out pretty quickly this is not for them, or they're not for us. And so that happens. It's a tough job. And I think we all recognize that it's a critical job, and they've got, they've a tremendous amount of power and authority is vested in them. And we need to make sure that we're getting good people that are respectful of the community, and we've got a great chief who has a tremendous amount of pride, along with his command staff of the people in it, and they don't tolerate people they're not going to live up to those standards, and those people are eventually shown the door. So I want to let you know that we've got the police officers. They know they don't want to be police officers. And I mean, think about, whether it's whatever profession you're in, right? Nobody wants to be associated with people that are bad apples. And we've got people of incredible integrity that show up every day for our benefit. And if we've got bad apples, we're going to get them out. But I do think that there's obviously, that's what this reform discussion is about. That's what the discussion at the legislature is about. And, let's see where we're at. Well, we'll see whether there's out of the statewide process, whether there's a requirement to have this kind of accountability. That's certainly what's being called for. And then, what does that look like, and what does that entail?
So Ms. Terza put in comments, accountability is preventative. It holds both police officers and law enforcement agencies responsible of effectively delivering services of most to treat all people fairly and within the law, and they must
Right.
treat everyone fairly.
I couldn't have written that better myself. I agree with that.
Okay, this one is a little bit longer message, so I'm going to read it to you so that everyone can hear what Ms. Lynn is saying. This is from Ms. Lynn Idahosa. Mayor Farrell, respectfully, this is a space where people are saying they do not feel heard by the process with the chief's call, or any current process is not enough. And we have discussed in the past, when showing up for BIPOC, it is very hard to hear that everything is okay. If the community here felt that the current system was working, they would not continue to bring this up. We have also discussed how data is gathered and discussed wanting updates to the current policies. There has been a huge desire locally, regardless of what happens in the state legislature. We have made asks in regards to how complaints are gathered as well, because community shows up and disagrees, so we can't keep writing proclamations and not championing what would create change, especially considering that we have had to implement policy changes to chokeholds in the past year. So it is completely reasonable that the community has said they want to have more say, because in the past, not having a say can often lead in death or a lawsuit.
Well, I don't want to keep, once again, there's
Please, Mayor Farrell, please do me this favor. Respectfully, you're doing a whole lot of explaining to the police perspective. If you're going to say anything right now, be on the side of your residents. We've listened for 10 minutes. That woman sounded distressed when she was telling her story, and your response to her was very tone deaf. And respectfully, that was my comment. Please don't let it make us listen to that. I really would appreciate that.
Well, I really take to heart the fact that I represent nearly 100,000 people, the entire community. And I think actually, and I think the council has said that, the safety of this community is our number one priority. I believe that. And I think everybody in this community would say that the local government, the safety of the community is absolutely a priority. There are, I think, what was it? I think Representative Taylor, when she first got started, said that she's going to be listening. And so, and learning. And so I hear that. And you've heard my statement about what the current status is of police accountability boards. So I won't restate it, and I'm listening.
So at this point, I know I'm moderating, but I want to make something very clear, that when a community says, and when residents say, I have fear and I have mistrust because I've been mistreated, is not an indictment of the entire force. It is not an indictment of the leadership's ability to act. What it is saying we're crying for help. And number one, we want to acknowledge that our cry is real. So we need our leaders to say, you have a valid complaint. And while I don't have the answers on how to fix it, and I know you have recommended some, and I'm trying to process that, I hear you. It is valid. I respect you, and I'm going to keep working on it until we figure out a way to address it, because your concerns are valid. And I think what Ms. Lynn is saying, and Ms. Lynn, if I'm misquoting you, by all means, let me know. And what I think what Ms. Denise was trying to say in our community and others are trying to say is that we haven't heard our leaders acknowledge the fact that we're hurting. And while some people have the cold or the flu, we're facing a pandemic and a tsunami and a hurricane and bad tainted water all at once. And it's coming from our interactions with some of the police officers. And we want to acknowledge that that is real. And we need someone to say, okay, it has happened to you. And that's one thing. It's sort of, so I think that it would be very helpful if we could just have that acknowledgement that our community is hurting and that those things that we're complaining about are real, it is valid, they are true experiences.
And I'm listening to you and I hear you, and I do believe that your concerns are valid. Absolutely. I do believe your concerns are valid, and I believe you. And it's our job to be better. It's our job to listen. And I'm going to take these to heart, and I'm going to really think about how we can best address it. So I will put some my heart and soul into it and think about it. But I hear you and I acknowledge it.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Terry Rogers Kemp said, I encourage the Federal Way Police Department to work with the community on all policies. I think she was thinking in terms of, yes, with respect to the police department. Ms. Terza said, we also need to look at the testing they go through. I think she's referring to the testing of police officers before they're hired. The testing looks for a type of mentality. I think this is where the DIE person coming in could possibly put together a lot of research and about testing and making sure that that testing that looks for a certain mentality that might show an implicit bias is incorporated in the testing.
Can you see my notes? I was just about ready to say that. I think you're absolutely right. I was actually just literally going to say that the bringing on the diversity, equity, and inclusion person, I think is going to be helping with that process.
Again, Ms. Terry said, and the police officers who are good need to be protected when they tell on bad guys that they can trust that they are safe in the field. Those are whistleblower protections, and they need to be strong. And we in the community need to be supportive of those as well to protect them because they're doing a good thing. Ms. Sonetta said that the chief's call is not efficient at all. The members are not chosen by the community. I don't know of one officer who has been held accountable by this group. They have no real input and no authority. A federal judge found 2 officers lied on their reports and in court. Not only did they keep their jobs, one was promoted. The officer found guilty of choking my son continued to choke 7 other people. There has been no accountability whatsoever.
Well, that was, with all due respect, we agree to disagree. We're just going to need to disagree on that case. That's one case. It doesn't make a department. It doesn't make. We disagree about that.
So I have a question, Mayor. The police officer in question.
Yeah.
Is there data on complaints made to that officer? Does the police department keep record of complaints made against officers?
Yes.
Okay. So there has to be data somewhere, right? That says this particular officer received these kind of complaints.
I'm not going to talk about that individual's officer's history here. It's been looked at. We're not going to have fairness to him. He's a police. We've gone through this process. There was a claim that there were, tens of complaints about him. That was inaccurate. I looked at it, and it's just not accurate. But we're not gonna have a process in which we go through. We have looked at that situation. We've looked at other situations, and we don't have an issue with that.
So
With
we've
him.
talked one time during a monthly meeting where there was a request made to share publicly with the community every so often the complaints made in aggregate, not against a specific officer, but in aggregate, how many complaints were made. So like, for example, in 2020, how many complaints were made? And were there a number of officers who received a certain number of complaints, right? And how many complaints were made from BIPOC residents? And we were asking specifically if that data was collected. I don't have in my notes, and I'm a pretty good note taker. I don't have in my notes that we ever came back to having that kind of discussion about, yes, we do collect that data. And so I'm formally requesting at this quarterly forum that we find out if that data is available, and is that something that can be shared periodically here, just in aggregate numbers. We're not talking about a specific police officer.
Okay. Okay. I've got the chief on the call. He and I will discuss it, and we'll get that to you.
Thank you very much.
We'll discuss it. Yeah. Okay.
Miss Joanna Howard says, police unions have become one of the most significant roadblocks to change police reform, for change and police reform. What are you doing to work with the police unions to reduce the roadblocks they present?
Well, we, the police union is separate from the internal set of guidelines that we have in regard to, if we believe anybody's committed any kind of misconduct or lie, if we find out anybody lies if we have a proven case of anybody lying, they will be terminated, period. So if we have misconduct, it's investigated. And I think that, any communication that I've ever had with the police guild has been that, we want the best officers and we're not going to tolerate misconduct. That's plain and simple. They know that. That's the culture that we don't have a culture that is, looks the other way. And, that's where we're at.
Mr. Lewis said, I've been a part of the chief's call, and honestly, they wanted me there, in my opinion, as a token Black man to check off the list. But when I bought real issues, eventually others came in and became the voice for the Black community.
Well, I think that's how he feels. I'm sorry he feels that way. I'm sorry that's the way you feel. I wasn't there. I wasn't a part of it. I don't, actually, our police chief is a person of color anyway. I think it was a person of color as well. He's the first Korean American police chief in the history of the United States. So he's, we don't select people for participation in that group, as for tokens. That's not the way the chief operates.
I saw a lot of expressions on folks' face as you said that. So in a moment, I'm going to call on some of you to
said what?
I'm going to, well, as you were speaking, Mayor, I saw some folks, the expressions on their face, and some people actually took off their video and then came back on afterwards. And I have a feeling why. But before I call on them, I'm going to read Ms. Terza's comment. Mayor, your word is your bond. If you cannot speak truth, how do you want us to trust that change will be made? So let's get to the heart of this situation. And I want to make it clear. I know we're talking about sensitive issues, and I know we're very passionate. I know I am. So I don't want anybody to confuse the passion with an indictment against another person, okay? So let's just be clear. We're still going to be respectful in our communication. Having said that, Mr. Evan Cook, you were one of the folks that put something up on your screen as the mayor was talking. Will you please unmute and explain what it was that gave you the kind of reaction so the mayor could understand where you're coming from. This is real talk with the mayor.
This is real talk with the mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, and I think Lynn put in the comments, it just was very kind of non-sympathetic that, and it was interesting how you presented, or you said that you won't tolerate lying. And then when Ms. Sonetta presented in her statement that the judge found that they were lying, and we haven't seen an accountability process, we can't speak to statistics. And so this is my example of why we need the community involved in the process and reviewing officer misconduct. This is exactly why, because when the community's asking for answers, the top, you know what I'm saying, the top shot in the community can't give us those answers. And that's the point of these calls. That's the point of these conversations. If we're going to bridge that gap, we are going to have to start getting some of these things answered truthfully and not politically.
Well, I am being truthful, period. And the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that
political, not truthful. And you're giving us roundabout answers, and you're avoiding giving us the direct truth. And I understand.
I'm giving you direct answers. Evan Cook,
we just ask for truth. We just ask for truth. That's it.
You got it.
In a non-political way.
Yeah, so I'm giving you straight truth.
If you ask for a stat, give us the stat.
Okay. Okay. Which the chief is on the call. I ask him to what he's got, he'll give.
Thank you.
And in regard to, we went to federal court. I'm not going to get into that one case. One case does not make a police department. One case does not make, but we fervently disagree.
Mayor Farrell, somebody's child was assaulted. Are you seriously going to do that with a child's mother on the phone?
Don't yell at me.
This is disrespectful. Out of all due respect for your office. We've had many conversations about this, and this is wrong. You cannot defend officers that have assaulted people's children, and you lost almost $700,000 in court. And you're going to sit here and still back him in the face of that child's mother?
Yeah.
How dare you? After you just put out that proclamation.
Hey, I didn't come here to get yelled at.
I am getting too emotional, so I'm going to exit.
Yeah.
And I would appreciate the rest of the fine members of the community.
You just need to, hey, I'm not here to get yelled at.
I'm sorry, I have to follow up.
Excuse me, Mr. Evan, Mr. Mayor, everyone. We are going to take a break. The reason for this break is for everyone to inhale. And let's understand something.
Of a mile, turn left.
Who's ever in the Samsung, can you please mute your phone? We can hear your directions being given from your phone. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break. And the reason why we're going to take a break is let's understand something. This is passionate for everybody. This is real. People are hurting over things that have happened. And it's not competing interests. Let's be clear. It's okay to disagree, but what's not okay is to not acknowledge that other people are hurting. So someone was hurt. Someone has been impacted by that hurt. And that needs to be acknowledged. And whether people agree with the court's decision or not, that person was still hurt. And Mr. Mayor, and to everyone else who is out there, if you have a child that has been hurt by a system and you're dealing with that, it is very real, and so is the pain. And we understand that and we acknowledge that. And so let's take a 60-second break. My timer is on. We're taking a break. Please, let's reset, take a deep breath, and we will continue in 1 minute. Thank you all.
Okay, I'm back.
Thank you all for that reset. I appreciate it. We're going to continue. There's been lots of comments in the chat about this situation, and I'm going to be respectful of the fact that we have reached an impasse. And so can we move on to something, a different topic that someone may have, or a different question? And this is something that we will revisit when the emotions are less high. It is difficult to reach a point at where change can happen when the emotions are so high. So we will reset and come back to that. Were there any other questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat.
Think you're getting cold?
Okay. Seeing none, then I'm going to close this portion of the dialogue with the mayor. I like the phrase real talk with the mayor because this is real talk. And I want to acknowledge the fact that a lot of people were vulnerable in their asking of questions. Yes, Ms. Terza.
I see a note. I thought somebody had their hand up. Maybe you didn't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me look. I'm sorry.
Devon,
Let me look.
Devon, I think she had her hand up.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's under a different name on here.
Oh, yes, I see it now. My apologies. I don't have two screens. I only have one. So please, thank you so much, Ms. Terza, for finding that. Please, Ms. Devon, go ahead.
Sure thing. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Allison, for asking that as well. I saw that in the chat. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time, and everyone here. Thank you so much for your time. I did have a quick question in regards to the police subject, and I know that that's something that we're all going to move on from, but I just had a quick question. So I did hear earlier that you mentioned something about something being in the works for our officers to possibly have body cameras. And as a mother of a Black son who is 7 years old, he, of course, is growing rapidly, and I look at him every day, and I'm ready. There's no sign I could put on him that says, hey, he's one of the good ones. There's no sign us Black mothers can, for us to say, hey, my son is fine. Hey, he's educated. Hey, I'm educated. We don't have those labels that we can label our kids with. God forbid he grows up and he gets into a spat at school or a situation while he's out in public. If he does happen to come across an officer, say if this policy was to move forward, and that officer were to turn off his body camera, what does accountability look like for an officer who is legally required to have his camera on, and especially if, say, a child or even an adult is severely assaulted or murdered? What does the accountability look like for that officer? And is there going to be any policy in place that he is going to be reprimanded just for the action of turning off that camera, even before it gets to whatever laws may have possibly been broken? Thank you.
Well, it's a great question about cameras, and one of the things that will need to occur when we do get the cameras is make sure that we have a very well thought out, very thorough policy with regard to what that looks like, and those policies. There's some discussion whether that would need to be agreed upon by the guild or not. I've got to go back and check on that piece. Because it is potentially a working condition, but the cameras wouldn't be on all the time. Like the Seattle Police Department police vehicles, I think they come on. What they do is as soon as they're dispatched or they get called to a certain scene, the cameras go on. I actually don't have a lot of experience with with in my prior experience about body cameras. I can tell you the expense is it's a tremendous amount of data, and you'll have to have we'll probably have to hire 2 extra prosecutors to go through all of the tape, and I have to make sure we store it all. But with regard to your particular question, I would imagine there would be, if it was improperly turned off, or if there is a question about that in violation of policy, there would be a punishment process or a discipline process for improperly turning off your camera.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
In the cupboard, the appliance cupboard.
And for you, I know that there's some jurisdictions across the United States that have been using body cams for a while. And are you aware of any research that's been done on best practices and protocols? Or there has been any research being done
Really?
on the use of
You haven't had any?
body cams?
Oh, well, that's good.
Having a hard time hearing, but I'm not aware of any. That's something that we'll have to really dig into as we go further and get the cameras and make sure that we've got. Right now, what we want to do is get the money to be able to do a program and then move forward.
Why do we need prosecutors to go through the data? Like, I'm an engineer, we can hire any data analyst. Why does it have to be a prosecutor?
Well, it's a great question. Civil Rule 4.7 requires that, and Terry knows this, any evidence in the possession of the prosecutor's office would need to be reviewed, and it needs to be turned over to the defense. And so if there's anything potentially exculpatory that would tend to decrease the guilt of somebody under Brady versus Maryland, that would absolutely have to be turned over. So you're looking really for inculpatory, exculpatory, anything of evidentiary value. You certainly don't, I don't, again, know how, whether the cameras would be on all the time. So, you're not going to give, again, I don't know. There's just certain things that it's a whole new practice. I don't know if the cameras are on all day, or if they, if they get into a situation where they automatically turn on their buttons. We need to be, I don't know that. So we need to, but any evidence in the possession of the prosecutor's office, who's ever in the background?
I don't know.
Samsung, can you please mute your phone?
So, prosecute, we need to make sure, in answer to that question, any information in the possession of the police department or in the possession of the prosecutor's office must be turned over to the defense, and especially if it's exculpatory. So that's why.
Wait, sorry. The data storage that might have data on it that shows a police officer potentially doing something wrong, I'm not saying they did do something wrong, is going to be evidence that the police officers are going to keep on themselves and then turn it over to the PAO for them to apply the Brady rule, which may or may not be needed because it may or may not be evidence.
No. What I'm saying is you'll have to go through. I don't know. What I don't know with this is how much extra data you've got. I mean, we don't want to turn over 8 hours of a driver, of an officer driving around or going to lunch or who knows what. I mean, I think you have to go over the material before it's provided to the defense.
But right now the cops are going to store data on themselves before it's provided to the defense.
Like in every other criminal case, on every other piece of evidence, and every police report. That's what happens. The police department responds to calls, makes reports, and turns them over after the case is prosecuted. That's the nature of the criminal justice system.
Okay, fair. So you're being held accountable to a standard you can't really enforce, because the broader systemic issue is that when we have evidence or info about police officers, there's really no external unbiased third party that can provide both storage for the data, but evaluation and investigation of it before the defense and PAO take over.
Well, these would start in the possession of the police department. They would be the police department's records. That's why you need the storage. And then in regard to, so say say it's a prosecution of eluding, or let's say it's a shoplift, and so you would want the data. You would want a prosecutor to go through and say, okay, when did this call start? When did this call end? The moment that the officer got the dispatch, you'd probably want to start the tape then, and you want to end it at the moment that that the officer logs off and tells the dispatch, okay, I'm ready for the next call. That, and so that would have everything in it. So it's not about whether they're selectively doing this. It's about, you'd have to have somebody. And that's why you need these people. That's what is expensive about it. But that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we've got, there are certain requirements, and you've got to make sure once you have this data, I mean, the obligation is on the police and the prosecutor's office to make sure that they don't even inadvertently hold on to something that's exculpatory. So that's what they do all the time.
Councilmember Kraft put in comments, for example, if an officer is on a case, witness, investigator, and there is any potential exculpatory material in a prosecutor must turn that information over to defense. If a prosecutor of if a prosecutor or if the officer does not turn that material over to defense, then that can be grounds to dismiss the entire case.
Right. And under 4.7, you're required to provide all the information that you want to use at trial anyway. So that's why you need people to go through all the voluminous records.
Didn't
That's what that's about.
Didn't the King County PAO just get fined $56,000 like last week or the week before for withholding info, and no one knows why or what happened with that data?
I haven't heard that. I don't know.
So I've been told that people can't hear me. Can you all hear me now?
You seem a little, it's a little bit like you're kind of in a, yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you. A little.
It's better?
Yeah, better. Yeah.
That's better?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you all so much. Ms. Terry Rogers Kemp says, this discussion is precisely why we need independent prosecutors and independent investigators, which is the subject of two bills at the legislative level. Representative Taylor and Johnson and Intiman offices, it just went away, hold on. Representative Taylor and Johnson and Intiman offices can provide more information. Councilmember Kraft put in comments, Cy, here's the fine article you're talking about. So in the Seattle Times, it's there's a link for those of you who can go to the chat. There's a link on the to the article in the Seattle Times about the King County prosecutor settles lawsuit over wrongfully withholding sexual assault investigation records, agrees to change policy. Thank you, Councilmember Kraft, for putting that in. So at this point, it is 8:25. Oh, and it looks like the prosecutor was fined for withholding records to the newspaper. Must have been a FOIA request, I'm guessing, a public request. Sister Lynn asked, this meeting is traditionally live streamed. When will the full recording be published to the official City of Federal Way YouTube or Facebook or Facebook?
Bill? I don't know. I'll have to talk to Thomas, our IT person.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so it
Probably
is
tomorrow.
4 minutes.
Probably tomorrow.
Probably tomorrow? Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor. Again, I apologize for the the difficulty in hearing. Thank you again, Councilmember Kraft, for putting that information in. So I want to open it up now to conversations or questions from those who are not of the African diaspora. We don't have a lot of time left, and I want to allow those folks an opportunity to speak. So at this time, if you have a question and you are not of the African diaspora, feel free to put it in chat. And I will also look to see if anyone raises their hand. Sister Terza, do you see anyone raising their hand? I'm looking too, and I don't see. Okay, I don't see, and no one's posting anything in chat. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to, oh, there is, I'm sorry. I was so busy looking at participants, I missed it. Thank you, Sister Lynn. As a former prosecutor and a mayor versed in the rules of evidence, if Mayor Farrell was making policies to prevent misconduct and fair records assessment, what does he think the best way would be to set that up? That question is from Ms. Sai. Did you catch that?
I did. I was just actually reading it. Well, I would make sure that whatever we do when we get this system, that we that we get a good system that will not have technical issues. That the last thing in the world you'd want to do is save a few dollars and then have some sort of glitch, happen, and in a case, down the road. So you'd want to make sure you've got a very good, reliable system. You'd want to make sure you've got redundancies in regard to saving. I'm a big believer in building in redundancies, and you've got to make sure you hire good people that are thorough and ethical, and you've got to we've got to make sure that we have a culture around the tapes and around the department that emphasizes that one of the things is one of the things I used to say at the prosecutor's office all the time to every witness was, we're in the truth business. And that's, I still feel like I'm in that now. And so our police officers should feel the same way. And anybody who doesn't believe that shouldn't believe in this organization, shouldn't belong to the police department. And that is our culture. And if I find out anything to the, and I know the chief feels the same way. So. But it's about trust. I want to go back and I just want to say, I think maybe in the future, I think that, let me just go back and discuss what was discussed previously. And I just want to go back. I think for, in future conversations, and I understand the passion, but I think it would probably be better to just, bookmark that case and just say, we agree to disagree. And I don't think it's productive to go back and wear that. Because one of the things is I don't think it's productive to argue about it. But I also don't think it's productive to, it is what it is. And I've said, what my position on that is. But I think, the problem is we had one case that, that had a, obviously went, to that level. And, I'm telling you, my perspective on it, but I don't think it's productive to,
excuse me, Mr.
continue to
Mayor.
argue about it. Yeah.
I don't want to be rude at all, and I mean, no disrespect, but I had already cut off that line of communication and discussion. And so
Okay.
I would like for you to please respect the fact that we're not going to discuss that any further because we're at an impasse, and I don't think it's fair to have the final word on this when we've already stopped the discussion. So
I hear that.
again,
Okay.
I think when we go to plan for the next meetings, we can discuss how we go in the future. But for
Okay.
now, I want to be fair to all those people. Let's not reopen that wound. Okay.
Okay.
I'm so sorry if I say your name wrong, but Tabu Bangora, you said that anyone in the police force caught lying would be terminated. Okay, so we're bringing up specific court cases, and so I'm not Taboo. I don't mean to be disrespectful of your comment at all. We will take note of it, but we're not going to discuss specific cases anymore at this time. Okay, we will have to do that at another time because the emotions here are too heightened, and I'm not in a position to address the emotions, and it's not being adequately discussed. So I understand. I know that this is hard for everybody, and I want to be respectful of that. But at this time, we're not going to discuss a specific case. And for those of you in my community who are concerned about the decision to do that, I understand and I take full responsibility for that. Okay, so since we had no other discussion or comments, yes, Ms. Terza, I'm sorry, go ahead. I see you.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate the situation that you're in. As the moderator, you've done a very, very good job. But I do want to say that as being part of the African American community who brought this, to have these kind of conversations with the mayor. Mayor, you have to respect the fact that we are passionate people, and for any time an African, and I don't want you to say anything, so please mute yourself. So I'm just going to be free to speak. Thank you. Because you have to understand, anytime an African American has a point and they want to say something, the Caucasian people call us angry Black men, angry Black woman. Anytime we have something to say that we totally disagree with what's being said to us, or the facts are just sitting before us, it's like, I like who is it, Judge Judy, that says, you can't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. So the stuff that we're talking to you about, it's real. The data proves it out. We're not just making stuff up. And again, we thank you for being here. We appreciate that. But no one is going to dictate the conversations that we have here except the people of color. So, and it's not a closed issue because there's still, it's real. And the only reason why the world is on fire behind these issues now is because we have videotape. We have iPhone cameras. This is not, it just didn't start this last year that we were able to see a George Floyd, somebody sitting on his neck for 9-10 minutes as the officers stood around him, as the world stood around, and no one could intercede because of the police department sitting on that man's neck. And the only reason we know about it is because of video cameras. So no, we can't allow you to just say, no, it happened and so what? We have too many people that have died. The only reason why we're being able to say their names, like Breonna Taylor, when you're talking about what the police bring forth evidence, they went into that woman's house, no knock, and killed her, and then wanted to say that all the shots went everywhere else in the house except for in her body. Come on now, you can't tell me that the police brought the true information. So we can't rely on what the police have been saying. And I'm not saying all police are bad. Please, that's not what we're saying. We have good police officers, but we also know that there's a code that if they say something, if they do something, they're held accountable and they're reprimanded, they're treated really bad in their own communities of the police officers. So we have to make sure that they have a right to speak up when it's wrong. They had a right to get that officer off George Floyd's neck. But because they didn't feel safe enough to do that, they stood with their brother. Those things have to change. So no, these conversations will continue. And they may be uncomfortable for you, but because you haven't had it, not just you, I'm not speaking to just the mayor, but I'm saying anybody other than African-American and BIPOC communities, you have not heard our voices. So you don't know how angry we are. You haven't heard us being verbal. And just because we have emotions, that doesn't mean that we can't sit down and still have a conversation. And that agree to disagree for the moment, that was fine. But no, this conversation is very much not over, and you need to be aware of that. So that's just how it is. But that's the purpose of having these conversations. And I'm looking at the city council. You guys also have sat very quietly, but you guys also have to know that you are the people that we elect to make these changes and hold these people accountable. And like I said, the police chief, Chief Wong, he's done a very good job, and he can only do what he can do. So I'm just saying that because we want everybody to know that that's the reason why we started having these conversations. You want to hear what we have to say, and it's not from your view, because you don't see it the way we see it. Like I said, this is not just start happening. This has been happening. And many of us people that sit in this audience have been, in those situations, but there was no cameras then. there was no video then. I mean, Rodney King was beat by all these officers and they still found him innocent. Come on now. This has got to change. And I think if anybody is paying attention to the world, not just Washington State, the United States, Asia, everyone else is saying something is wrong. So you can't keep coming to our meetings and hearing us with a prosecutor's ear. That's not going to work for us, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you, but that's not going to work. That's not the purpose of these conversations. The conversations are to actually affect change, because what's happening right now, it's not working, and it's got to change. So I do appreciate everybody, and thank you.
So, Ms. Cherza, I want to
Yes.
thank you. That was a great recap. Ms. Terry Rogers can't put in the chat Between the World and Me by Richard Wright. I would encourage those folks to read it. It's an excellent book that would shed some light on this discussion that we're having. Sister Sai put in here, and it's not just a Black issue. 1 in 11 deaths in our nation due to killings are from police officer response and action. Disproportionately Black, but also a huge public health crisis. I don't want to grow up or raise children in a place where 1 in 11 killings through the nation are law enforcement related. Sister Sonetta said, I mean no disrespect, but there is a huge difference between being Black and a person of color. So true. And then not the book by Tanisha Coates, but the poem by Richard Wright. The book is excellent too. You meant the poem. Yes, yes. Excellent. The poem. It's an excellent poem. Okay, with that said, it is now 8:37. I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. Thank you for allowing myself and Ms. Terza to moderate this discussion. Thank you all for staying on. Mayor, we appreciate the preparation that you did for this meeting, the honest talk. I want to thank you all for your discussions and all of the council members and other elected officials that are here and present. At this time, Lynn, would you like to do closing remarks?
I just want to thank everyone for coming. I appreciate everyone for participating in this process. This is our 3rd meeting. I'm grateful that we'll be able to continue it. I definitely am going to be working on keeping my emotions in check. But at the same time, I'm responsible for people that come to this call and their emotions and what they're feeling. So I want to make sure I honor that in every moment. So thank you all, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the honest talk, and I'll listen, and I'll take all this to heart. I will. I promise.
And Mayor, thank you. You did 2 proclamations. You did a lot of the ask, right? We didn't get the full-time DE, but we got a part-time with the goal of doing full-time. You did 2 proclamations, right? The Diversity Commission did do, a very good discussion about the 13th Amendment, and you are working to see that the commission has an increased role. We appreciate the equity and inclusive discussions you're having about testing and vaccination, and hearing us clearly about the mistrust that our community has had with the healthcare system and trying to address it. So we want to acknowledge the things that have been accomplished thus far, and also the legislative ask that the city has, especially supporting BIPOC businesses and for our youth. And so we recognize that there are some grounds being made. And I think because of these meetings that we've had, a lot of things are changing. And we want to recognize that we do see that. There's more to come. It's a slow process, but we want to acknowledge what has been done thus far. So thank you.
Thank you.
You all be safe out there. Mask up. Stay 6 feet apart. Sending you all a virtual hug. Take care.
Bye, guys.